Welcome to the deep dive. We're all about, really getting into the core ideas from different sources.
And today, we've got something pretty unique on the table.
Yeah, we're looking at chapter 37. It's called Absence of Desire from the Built for Greatness, Built for God movement handbook.
Right. And this handbook positions itself as, well, a kind of Christian interpretation of the Tao Te Ching. And this particular chapter, chapter 37, it really zooms in on this idea of God's unchanging nature. And how that, combined with, let's say, an absence of worldly desire within us, impacts the harmony of, well, everything, creation itself.
So a connection between the divine, our inner state, and the outer world. That's quite a concept.
It really is. It suggests our internal world matters a lot.
So let's start with our renewal. This section seems to focus on mindset.
Exactly. Renewal is all about shifting our perspective. They use something called the Trinitarian MAP here.
MAP.
Mindset, aim, practice. So we start with mindset. And the first key mindset idea is trust in divine non-action.
Okay, divine non-action. That sounds paradoxical. It comes from the line, an unchanging God is in non-action, yet through him, all things are done.
It does sound a bit like a riddle, doesn't it? But the text clarifies it's not about God doing nothing.
Right. It connects it to scripture, like Ecclesiastes 3 talking about God's eternal works, and James 1 saying God is constant, the source of good gifts.
So the idea is more about trusting that God is always at work, subtly, powerfully, even when we don't see obvious, overt action. God's ways aren't our ways.
Or Psalm 46, be still and know that I am God. So it's about faith in the unseen process, trusting the timing.
Precisely. It's a call to trust God's timing and methods, especially, in times of uncertainty when we might feel anxious or want to jump in and fix things ourselves. Yeah. This suggests peace comes from trusting the process, even when it's quiet.
Okay, what's the next mindset shift in renewal?
The second one is lead by example for transformation. This is based on the line, if powerful leaders live according to God, the world will transform itself.
Powerful leaders. Does that mean like politicians or CEOs? Or is it broader?
It seems broader. The handbook suggests leadership in God's view is really about service, humility, living out his principles.
So not necessarily about position, but influence through character.
Exactly. It links to Romans 12 about renewing your mind, not conforming to the world, actually encourages moving towards simplicity, away from corruption.
Okay, so the real world application is?
It's about consciously modeling God's love, integrity, justice in whatever sphere of influence you have. Like Matthew 20 says, the greatest is the servant.
So living it out, and that has a ripple effect. Proverbs 29 mentions righteous leaders bringing joy.
Yeah, that's the idea. Your life becomes the example that can inspire change.
Makes sense. The third mindset point is seek contentment in simplicity.
Even if people begin to desire, they will be drawn back by the simplicity of God.
This feels very countercultural again. Finding joy in less, not more.
Definitely. And the text directly links this simplicity to inner peace. It references Romans 8 about setting the mind on the Spirit leading to life and peace.
So how do you practice that?
Well, the suggestion is to intentionally focus on your blessings, the essentials, and actively simplify your desires. Less chasing, more appreciating.
Like Matthew 6 advises, seek first the kingdom.
Exactly. Or Philippians 4, where Paul talks about learning contentment in all circumstances. It's an internal shift away from materialism.
Okay, moving on. The fourth mindset is live without desire for worldly gain.
This connects to the line, the simplicity of God brings absence of desire.
Now, absence of desire, that sounds quite stark. Does it mean we shouldn't want anything? No ambition?
That's a really important clarification the handbook makes. It's not about becoming ambitionless or passive.
So what is it about then?
It's more about the object of your desires. It's about letting go of attachment to worldly things, status, excessive wealth, fleeting pleasures that distract from God's purpose.
Aligning your desires with God's will rather than just eliminating desire itself.
Precisely. The practical advice is to examine your motivations. Are you driven by eternal values or temporary gains? Think Matthew 6 again, about treasures in heaven versus treasures on earth.
And 1 Timothy 6 talks about godliness with contentment being great gain.
Exactly. It reframes what gain actually means.
Got it. Then there's the fifth point. Cultivate peace through stillness.
The absence of desire leads to stillness.
This seems to follow logically. If you're not constantly striving and wanting, your mind might quiet down.
That's the idea. When the internal noise of desire lessens, it creates space to hear God, to experience his peace.
Like finding quiet in a loud world.
Yes. And the practical application is straightforward, though maybe not easy. Intentionally create moments for quiet reflection, prayer, just being still. Psalm 46 again, be still.
Or like Jesus withdrawing to quiet places, as mentioned in Mark 1.
Right. Making that stillness a deliberate practice.
And the final mindset piece under renewal.
It's promote harmony by embracing God's will, which flows from the chapter's conclusion. Thus, the world will be one in harmony.
So this connects our inner state directly to global harmony. That's a big claim.
It is, but the logic follows their thread. Inner peace, found through aligning with God's will and simplicity, naturally leads to outward peace. If individuals are at peace, communities can be.
And the application is to be a peacemaker.
Yes, actively work towards unity and understanding in relationships and communities, embodying that love and truth. Romans 14 talks about pursuing peace. Matthew 5 calls peacemakers blessed.
Okay, so that covers the renewal section, shifting our mindset in these 6 key ways. Now, what about AIM? How does that differ?
AIM takes those same core principles, but focuses them on direction. Where should these mindsets lead us? What should we be aiming for?
I see. So revisiting the unchanging God is in non-action. For AIM means?
It means aiming to actively trust divine timing, resisting that urge to force things or take control when maybe you should wait and seek guidance. It reinforces that Isaiah 55 idea. His ways are higher.
And if powerful leaders live according to God as an aim.
That directs us to aim for living authentically by God's standards in every part of life, intending for our lives to be a positive influence, like that light of the world idea in Matthew 5.
So it's about intentionality in our influence.
Exactly. And the line about simplicity, even if people begin to desire.
The aim there would be
to actively embrace simplicity, aim for contentment, make choices that resist materialism, and prioritize your relationship with God, like Matthew 6 suggests.
Okay. And the simplicity of God brings absence of desire.
The aim is to consciously evaluate your priorities. Aim to detach from unhealthy attachments and focus on eternal values, really internalizing that message from 1 Timothy 6 about true gain.
So it's about directing your focus purposefully.
Yes. And the absence of desire leads to stillness. The aim is to actively seek that inner quiet, make time for it, aim to connect with God's presence, like Psalm 46 encourages.
Finally, thus the world will be one in harmony. The aim
is to actively aim for unity, seek peace, be intentional about reconciliation in your actions, aligning with God's desire for harmony, as we see in Romans 14 or Matthew 5.
So aim really translates the mindset shifts into life direction, which logically leads us to P practice.
Exactly. How do we actually do this stuff day to day? Practice gets concrete.
Okay, let's walk through that. Practicing trust in God's timing and action. How does that look?
It looks like, well, actively practicing patience. When things don't go your way, consciously choosing to wait, to pray, to align your actions with God's perceived will instead of just reacting. It's a discipline.
So less frantic effort, more aligned action.
Right. And practicing lead by example in God's way.
That sounds like making specific choices.
It is. It's about practicing honesty when it's hard, practicing servant leadership in your team or family, consistently modeling integrity, not just talking about it, living out Matthew 5's call to let your light shine.
Okay. How about practicing embrace simplicity and contentment?
Maybe decluttering your home or schedule, intentionally choosing experiences or relationships over buying more things, practicing gratitude for what you have.
Shifting your habits to reflect that value.
Exactly. And practicing let go of excessive desires.
This sounds like ongoing work.
It probably is. It involves regular self-reflection. What's really driving me? Am I chasing status, security, and then practicing detachment, maybe through prayer or conscious choices, letting go of those things that don't align with eternal values?
Like actively checking your motivations against Matthew 6 or 1 Timothy 6.
Precisely. And practicing cultivate inner peace and stillness. Scheduling time for silence, maybe starting the day with quiet reflection instead of immediately grabbing your phone, practicing mindfulness or contemplative prayer, making stillness a non-negotiable.
Like Jesus did, making time for it.
Right. And finally, practicing strive for unity and harmony.
This has to be about relationships.
Absolutely. It's practicing active listening, practicing forgiveness, even when it's difficult, seeking understanding across differences, making tangible efforts towards reconciliation, putting Romans 14 and Matthew 5 into real action.
So practice is really where the rubber meets the road, taking these concepts and embedding them in daily actions.
Exactly. And that leads us to the final part of the Restore framework, respond.
Respond. How does this fit in?
Respond takes a step back and looks at how these teachings from chapter 37 resonate or perhaps connect with broader spiritual truths, even across different religions.
Ah, okay. Finding common ground or parallels. This could be really interesting.
It is. So take the first idea, God's non-action yet powerful work.
How does that connect elsewhere?
Well, besides the Christian view of sovereignty, the text draws parallels. It mentions the Taoist concept of wu wei.
Which is like effortless action or acting in flow with nature.
Sort of, yeah. Acting without forcing.
Mhm.
And also Hindu teachings in the Bhagavad Gita about performing actions without attachment to the results, and Islamic emphasis on Allah's will ultimately governing all things.
So different paths pointing to a power working beyond our full grasp.
That seems to be the connection being made. The response is to recognize this potentially universal insight and lean into trust and stillness, like Psalm 46 suggests.
Okay. What about leaders living according to God's will?
Parallels are drawn there too. Beyond Christianity's light of the world, it points to Judaism's Micah 6.8 act, justly, love mercy, walk humbly.
A classic call for ethical leadership.
Right. And also Buddhist ideas about compassionate leadership being vital for society, and Islamic teachings in the Quran about ruling justly and upholding trusts.
So a common emphasis on integrity and justice in leadership across traditions.
Exactly. The response is to embrace that call to servant leadership wherever you find yourself.
And embracing simplicity. Does that show up elsewhere?
Oh, definitely. The text connects the Christian idea of storing treasures in heaven with, for example, Buddhist teachings in the Dhammapada linking attachment to suffering.
So less attachment, less suffering.
Yes. And Hindu encouragement of simple living for spiritual insight, and Islamic warnings against extravagance, focusing instead on faith.
It seems many traditions value inner richness over outer accumulation.
That's the unifying idea highlighted. The response is to prioritize that simplicity and spiritual depth in your own life.
What about absence of desire brings stillness?
Again, parallels are suggested. Christian focus on seeking God's kingdom first. Buddhism's Four Noble Truths, where letting go of craving is key to ending suffering.
Right, desire as the root of suffering.
And Hindu concepts of detachment leading to peace, and Islamic verses speaking about finding peace through remembrance of God, not worldly pursuits.
So the common thread is that uncontrolled desire leads to unrest, while letting go brings peace.
That's the connection drawn. The response involves practicing mindfulness, reflecting on desires, and cultivating that inner stillness.
And the final one, cultivating unity and harmony.
This one has strong echoes. Jesus' prayer for unity in John 17, Buddhist emphasis on compassion as the basis for harmony.
And Hinduism.
The concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the whole world is one family, a really powerful idea.
Wow. And Islam.
Strong calls in the Quran for brotherhood, peace, and reconciliation among people.
So unity as a shared aspiration across faiths.
It seems so. The response and courage is to actively prioritize peace and understanding in all our interactions, embodying that peacemaker role from Matthew 5.
It's quite remarkable seeing those potential convergences highlighted in the response section. It really broadens the perspective.
It does. It suggests these core ideas about divine power, simplicity, peace, and unity might tap into some universal human spiritual insights.
So wrapping up our deep dive into Chapter 37, this idea of absence of desire, explored through renewal, aim, practice, and respond, it offers, well, quite a profound path, doesn't it?
It really does. It touches on personal transformation, leadership, and even finding common ground across different spiritual outlooks.
The core themes, simplicity, trust in something beyond ourselves, seeking inner peace, striving for unity, they seem incredibly relevant, maybe more than ever.
I think so. It's about finding a different way to navigate the world, perhaps a more centered, harmonious way.
Which leads us to a final thought for you listening in. Considering everything we've explored, how might consciously embracing some form of this absence of desire in your own life actually change things for you?
Yeah, what if you let go of just one thing you're clinging to, a specific outcome, a material possession, maybe the need for approval?
How might that shift things? Could it bring more clarity, more peace? Maybe even allow you to have a more positive impact?
It's definitely something to reflect on. How could aligning with these principles, even in small ways, lead to a more, well, harmonious existence?
A great question to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope it sparked some valuable thoughts.